of the Dr. Marquita Blades Show, candid conversations that create change. I am Dr. Blades, and as I have been promising you all week, you can see that we have a power-packed panel for our 2018 Back to School special. We are going to jump right in so that all of my guests have enough time to share with you all of their valuable advice for the 2018-2019 school year. We're going to start with our guests who are zooming in from other states, and we'll start with Ashley Little.
Awesome. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley Little. I am a Regional Vice President of Recruitment in the for-profit industry. I have been in the industry for 13 years, and I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you for joining us, Ashley.
Thank you.
Carlanda.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carlanda Williams, known as the Magical Teacher. I've been in education. This will be my 7th year. And I was Teacher of the Year for my district last year. I'm in California. I teach at the 4th largest district, which is Fresno. And I'm happy to be here. Next year, I'll be a teacher on special assignment and an instructional coach for new teachers.
Thank you for joining us. And Dr. Sharon Porter.
Hello, absolutely. Thank you so much. So excited to be here. So I am Dr. Sharon Porter. I am an educator for over 25 years. I actually have served as principal, assistant principal, and of course, classroom teacher. I currently serve as a leadership development coach in one of the largest school districts in the Washington, D.C. area. I work with our 1st and 2nd year assistant principals, as well as our 1st and 2nd year principals.
Thank you for joining us, Dr. Porter. And now my panelists who are in studio with me will take the opportunity to introduce themselves, and we'll start with you, Jamil.
Okay, I'm Jamil Miller-Brown. I'm the proud principal of Riverdale High School. This is my 24th year in education. I've served as a teacher, a counselor, assistant principal, and middle school principal, as well as high school principal. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Erica Johnson, and I'm entering my 25th year in education. I, too, have served as a special education teacher. I've served as a special education teacher, assistant principal, and I'm entering my 11th year as principal this year. And I'm happy to be here as well.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charbrinia Lockhart. I'm actually entering my 27th year as an educator. I actually started as a substitute teacher, then a teacher, then a parapro, then I became a teacher, and then I became an instructional coach and assistant principal, and I've served as an assistant principal for 10 years, and I've been a principal for 5 years, and I'm the proud principal of Roberta T. Smith Elementary School in Clayton County Schools.
All right. Thank you, Tony.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Tony Owens. I'm the co-founder of the Foundation for Educational Success. This is my 30th year serving in education. Looking forward to having this discussion with the panel. Thank you for having us today, Dr. Blades.
You're so welcome. Thanks for being here.
And my name is Reginald Beaty. I'm the co-founder, along with Tony, of the Foundation for Educational Success. My previous background, I used to run the largest dropout prevention organization in the state of Georgia and started about 45 non-traditional schools around the country for kids who were vulnerable at risk of dropping out of school.
All right, so thank you to all of my guests for those introductions. As I told y'all, we have a plethora of experience. So what I want to start by asking each of you, based on your particular role in education, what would you say should be the priorities for teachers for the beginning of this 2018-2019 school year? And we can start with you all who are at home on Zoom, going in the same rotation as your introductions.
I would say to stay focused and prepare your students for applying for scholarships and just making sure that they're on pace to what they're trying to do as far as getting into the schools that they're wanting to do.
So when you talk about for scholarships, I know a lot of parents and students aren't thinking about that at the beginning of the year. So Ashley, what types of things should they be doing in the beginning of the school year as it relates to scholarships?
Well, I have my nonprofit is Sweetheart Scholars, and what we do each year is give out scholarships to African American females who are looking to continue their education in school. So what I would say, just looking over the applications that I've had thus far, is to make sure that you don't wait to the last minute. and that you get your community service done and make sure you volunteer and stay involved. So you will have things to put on your applications to attract our attention, as well as keeping your GPA up, and just making sure that you reach out to your teachers and your school officials and get ready to prepare your letters for your scholarship applications as well.
Okay, thank you for that. Carlanda, from a teacher's perspective, what would you think the students need to know as they enter this 2018-2019 school year?
What students need to know, I think they need to have a growth mindset and just understand that you can't just say, oh, I don't know my multiplication yet. You still have to have the work and the grit behind that. And they also need to be taught coping skills to be able to handle when they don't reach those certain targets that they want to do, and just be able to build a community with each other. That's what I think is important for our students right now, because there's a lot of, especially in California with Common Core standards, we're trying to teach our students how to be critical thinkers and work collaboratively. So they need to be able to work well with others as well.
All right, so I definitely want to come back to a point that you made a little bit later regarding those coping skills. And I want you to share with the teachers how they can help support the students in developing those skills. Dr. Sharon, what's your initial advice?
Absolutely. For students, definitely is to find your support system. As students enter in, whether they're coming to a new school, a new grade level, whatever it is, there's always a little angst. And so for students, I definitely say to find your support system. Find those individuals that are going to support you and that are positive to be around so that you can have a very fruitful school year.
Very well, thank you. In studio guests?
I think the priority for teachers should be getting to know as much as they can about students before they come to school, so that you can establish those relationships using the resources, so that when they step into the door, you can speak to some of their strengths and weaknesses. And so some of those things that you would use as Infinite Campus, looking at the contact log, their grades in the past, and utilizing SODS. So making sure that you have that background information so that you can develop those positive relationships with students.
And at the elementary school level, I think one of the things that's really important is to go over routines and procedures. Safety is our #1 concern. So tomorrow is day 1, and we have 2 things that we focus on: making sure all of our students are fed and making sure all of them get home to the appropriate location. So definitely working on procedures. And Harry Wong's First Day of School, as old as that book is, it is still true and tried. And so that is something that we'll definitely be sharing with our staff to make sure that we have our routines and procedures in place so that we can have an efficient school year. Thank you.
And I agree actually with all of my colleagues actually, but one of the things that I'd like to add would be for us to, what I'm going to do is focus on soft skills, because as Jamil said, the relationships are very important, but if the adults are the only ones that know how to develop those relationships, that's not going to make it what we'd like it to be for the school year. So that being the case, we actually teach our children the soft skills, the eye contact, if you will, the saying good morning, the walking on the right-hand side of the hallway, if you will. So soft skills are very important as we, of course, get them ready for college and career as well.
I like the fact that everyone here has mentioned relationships and procedures and routines. And Reggie and Tony, your work with the Foundation for Educational Success is totally immersed in creating a high-performing culture that's based around those types of structures. So can you all take a moment to talk to us about the work that you do?
Well, thank you very much. Our perspective is, just like our name, the Foundation for Educational Success. Our belief and our philosophy is a high-performing culture and climate is the foundation for educational success, whether you're talking about in the building or the classroom. And so we like to ask the question, it's when we go in a building and from administrators and leaderships, whether it's in the building or in the classroom, what are those things that administrators and teachers do the first 2 weeks of school that sustains them the rest of the year? Because just like any other lesson plan, anything that you deliver intention, those things have to be taught. And we know all kids that come to school from various perspectives, but how do we create that high-performing culture and climate in the building and in the classroom?
And we also look at it from a perspective of rigor, relevance, and relationships. The ladies that spoke earlier, they already spoke about the fact that you have to have a good, strong relationship. You cannot teach a kid that you don't know. So we say if you spend that first 2 or 3 weeks of your school year, making sure you build those relationships in order that they will not only be in your class as a student, but they'll be there as a person that you actually know, you know, their family, you know, their likes, you know, their dislikes. Once you learn those things about a kid, you can teach them anything in the world.
Absolutely. You all mentioned some of the things that we're going to hear later in this broadcast when you see my segment that was taped earlier with Georgia's gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams. So y'all stay tuned for that as we get deeper into this discussion with these great guests, and then we will lead into that segment a little bit later. So going into our next question, I want to direct this to Dr. Porter. You work specifically training administrators. Tell me what types of activities you engage them in so that they can be ready to build the type of culture and climate that Reggie and Tony have described.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm going to start with the assistant principals. I am the coordinator for our induction program for our first and second year assistant principals. And so this program really, first of all, is an introduction to administration initially, because most of them are coming straight from the classroom. And so the lens are different. And so what we do is really engage them in knowing how to build a positive culture and climate for their school. When you're coming into a new area, the first thing we always do is say, listen and learn. That's the first thing. And especially for a new principal coming in, you do not want to come in changing things unless, of course, as you mentioned before, if it's a safety issue, then you want to, of course, change that. But everything else, you want to listen and learn what the climate is, learn the culture, then begin to put your touches on it so that you can be effective. No one wants a leader that's coming in and just going to change everything about what the school has built. Listening and learning is essential.
I think a lot of times when parents and students think about back to school, they're thinking in terms of what supplies do I need? What classes am I going to take? Are my friends are coming back to this school this year? But I want the principals who are in the studio to speak about all of the things that go on behind the scenes that people don't even know that has to happen for back to school.
It's so much that I don't know where to start. Just making sure that, going back to relationships, making sure that you have teachers in the right subject matters. For example, just when I think about a physics course, of course I want somebody that's strong in the content. However, I want somebody that's also considerate of the student, because you're talking about graduating that child, making sure that they have multiple opportunities for success and credit recovery. So you need somebody that's flexible as well as strong in the content area. So thinking about matching up that in terms of the building and the physical spot, we've just received training with that. So transitions, arrival times, dismissal times, there's so much that goes into that. I'll let Tony speak more to that.
Wow, we've had an opportunity, Reggie and I, or somebody from our team had a chance to spend time in one of these three ladies' schools to go in and assess their culture and climate. And one of the things we like to say, first of all, those that are good always try to figure out how to get great. So these ladies already have a great culture and climate in their schools, but they're trying to figure out what do I need to do to get better, and making sure that all of my kids, from the time they get to my school to the time that they end, they have a successful day in front of them. And that comes with a lot of paying attention to detail around arrival, not taking anything for granted, making sure that lunch is in place, making sure transition is in place, making sure that people understand, not just the kids, because we don't think that the kids are the problem most of the time. It's adults that are not on post a lot of times. So we like to make sure that they pay attention to detail around those things when we like to call a day in the life. And we won't go into a lot of detail in that, but we like to always say that these three young ladies that are here with us today have already done an excellent job in putting that in place, but they're trying to figure out how to go from great to distinguished.
So would any of you like to share some examples of the culture and climate in your building? What are some, I guess, give a couple of the practices that are standard in your building that other administrators could use as a model?
Well, one of the things we do at Lake City Elementary is the first 3 weeks of school. We definitely invite parents to come into school to eat lunch or to eat breakfast with their children, but the first 3 weeks of school, that practice is suspended. And the reason that practice is suspended is because we want to make sure that our children know what the expectations and the procedures are. So once we clearly establish what the expectations and procedures are with the students, then we invite the parents to come in to eat either breakfast and or lunch with our children. It's very important that the children know the procedures for everything. Mr. Owens mentioned that our school system has a behavior matrix. And so on the behavior matrix, it identifies the behavior that the student should exhibit when they're in the classroom, in the hall room, in the restroom, on the bus. And so the first week of school, our teachers are going over procedures and expectations so that students know how to behave and what the expectations are in every setting when they're at school.
And I'll add to what Erica communicated. It's very similar to her school. We teach the expectations day one. So for example, on tomorrow at my school, we will actually have positive behavior assemblies, because again, having a positive environment is very, very, very key to ensuring that you're able to reach the high expectations you have for instruction. So we will meet with the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in particular on tomorrow. Also, as the ladies communicated, parent buy-in is very important. So again, we allow all the parents to come in, because especially for kindergarten, they're all, it's very difficult for parents of kindergarten children, and sometimes even first, but after that they pretty much drop them off pretty much, and they are not as worried. But it is very concerning for parents of kindergarten students, so we allow them to kind of wean themselves off of the children, if you will. And then, and so, but walking down the hallway, we have, it's structure, as Tony and Reggie communicated, coming in the morning. Another thing, having a positive environment. And I don't want to bring up a particular restaurant because I know that's not, with advertisement, but we run it like that restaurant. You should feel a certain way when you leave Smith Elementary School. You should feel that you are valued as a customer, because we run our school as though it is a business.
I think the only other thing I would add to that is I think this perspective, we know what the building administrators are doing and the teachers, but I think it's extremely important that from a district perspective, when you talk about high expectations and you're talking about outcomes, what is that support that school systems are getting? And in this case, I would just say Clayton County school system has looked at it from a different perspective. How do we create high expectations to create a high-performing culture and climate? And we know that the end result is teaching and learning, but there are so many things that go into that. We always think about the end, whether that's CCRPI and GMAS and attendance and all those other outcome things. But what we need to look at is what are those things that creates an environment so teaching and learning can occur. And when we look at administrators, those administrators that create the right environments, and that doesn't mean always you're doing just a great job. It also means those that are not doing a great job, and that's all stakeholders, parents, teachers, and students. And so from our perspective, when we see that and we see that type of support, we see leaders taking a leader role in that, and then we know principals who are out there in their buildings, and when you walk in, they have what we call that it factor. But it has to be intentional and deliberate, just like school improvement plans. School improvement plans, we always say, where's that component that focuses on how do you create that environment so everyone involved can be successful?
Thank you. One of the biggest concerns of parents is, who is my child's teacher going to be? I want my child to have a good teacher. And so that's why today I invited the magical teacher so that she can share what are the things that you do to make magic in the classroom. Teachers want to know because they want to be able to replicate that practice.
Okay. Well, spreading magic to me, I have an acronym, and M is motivation. And so that's when I talked about earlier, having a growth mindset, and also teaching them that they have to work hard. You can't just say, oh, well, one day I'm going to get it, but you actually have to work at it, and then actually teaching them the coping skills for when they don't have it. And also being okay with making mistakes in front of your kids, because that's a learning thing for them. And they can see that, oh, she has to have a growth mindset too. We're alike. We're in this together. A is academic accountability, and that's just, your students should be doing the heavy lifting. You should be facilitating and making the learning engaging, which I'm jumping the gun. And G is goal driven. So you have to have goals for yourself, goals for your students individually, and goals for your classroom. And goals for yourself could be, I'm gonna leave at 4 p.m. because you need to take care of yourself. or it could be so and so doesn't always push their chair, and I'm going to work with them to push their chair in. Or a whole class could be let's see how we can walk from point A to point B on the line quietly, how many times we could do that. And that builds community in your classroom, and it makes them feel like proud, like I'm a part of this atmosphere. I is inquisitive thinking. So that means we need critical thinkers out there, and we need to teach our students how to ask high-level questions and answer high-level questions. Yes. And then C, which is the part that you want to hear about, the content engaging. That means you make an experience for your students. My students wanted to come to school every single day. I was sending kids to the nurse, and they threw up, told the nurse, oh no, I need to go back to class. And no, you need to go home. And that type of relationship doesn't happen overnight. You have to really build it. And so I did things like we do gestures, we act things out. I did a wax museum for history. For open house, instead of just having my parents just coming in, I did a science fair with real judges from the community. And then the awards assembly was during open house. Like just doing different things creates that magic. And then of course the atmosphere looked like Disneyland. And so that also kept the magic as well. But I think building those relationships, I have a relationship with each and every one of my students from last year. And in fact, I made a commitment to all 25 of them that I will see them through 12th grade. So every year, the day before school, I'm going to meet with them and talk about growth mindset, talk about their goals, build them up, and expose them to the standards that they're going to get next year. And then, of course, when they get in middle school and high school, I'm going to seek out those teachers to meet them and then tell them what middle school is going to be like, tell them what high school is going to be like, because we have that type of relationship. And that's what magic is to me. If that answers your question.
Oh, that's perfect. And so I want you to just tell us a little bit more about your goal setting event that you have. What does that day look like with you and the students?
So that day is going to look like I have about, I believe I heard about from at least 15 of them. I'm still waiting to get more, and some students are moving away. And I also told them it doesn't matter what school you go to, you're mine forever, so come. And so it's going to look like them coming in. They're going to have a sheet that has what are your worries? What are you excited about? What are 3 goals that you have for yourself academically? Do you have any goals for yourself socially? And then we're going to just discuss and talk about, I'm going to remind them what grit is, how hard they need to work, and tell them what to expect in 4th grade. And so I'm really excited to see them. I had someone from donate pizza and supplies, and I can't wait to hear about their summer, and yeah, I'm excited.
Well, I think it's excellent that you're doing that and following the students and help them to think about the next year and how they can be successful. So what would you say to teachers who say, that's not my personality to do all of that?
Well,
how do they set the tone?
What was that?
How would they set the tone in their classroom if a teacher is saying to you, oh, that works for you, but that's not my personality?
Right. Everybody has a different personality. And of course, I'm a more upbeat person. And I think you just need to find you and what's good for you. And what you need to always connect to what your why is. Knowing why you're in the classroom, or why you're a principal, or why you're whatever it is that you're doing in education will keep you motivated. I wake up every day grateful that I get to work with these kids, or I get to work with these adults. And when kids have that aha moment, or I have a teacher tell me, I tried one of your strategies and it worked, and my kids, that's what gives me the fire to keep going. And I think it's very easy to get lost in all the day-to-day in education, and you can easily forget why you're in this. You have to be in this for kids. So you have to connect your why to kids. And if it's not connected to kids, then we need to figure out how we can connect that. And that's how you get that magic. And you don't have to be bubbly. That's just me. You lay back, then you be laid back, and you give the kids what you give them this. But I'm gonna be like this, and that's okay. I accept everybody for who they are. So that would be that's actually what I tell people, because I get that all the time. Are you like this all the time? Yes, I am. And that's me. So that's okay.
Principals, do you have any comments about that? Because I'm sure you have teachers in your building, some who are bubbly like Carlanda, and then some who are the laid back. So how do you make that work in terms of putting together the right faculty for your students?
Well, I want to just commend her. She hit that on the head, didn't she, you guys? I mean, she really did. That is really great, and people have to find their own personality. However, sometimes it has to be an acting job. I also let teachers know that as well until you find your niche. But as far as how I staff my particular school, I am always looking for the LeBron Jameses, if you will, in education. I don't know nobody else's name, but I'm always when I say that to people.
And everyone understands what that means.
I'm looking for the stars because, as Carlanda said, you have to, first of all, love children to do the work and to do it well. And when they actually know you love and care about them, because I actually sent an email to my staff the other day, love is going to be the game changer at Smith every single time, because that's going to always let them want to please you. They will submit to you when they know that you love them. But basically, I have to get the best teachers, and that means sometimes I have to do the non-traditional interview styles, if you will. I take calls up until 11 o'clock at night, and that means the call can start when I'm trying to recruit a teacher, because they're always working, because we have plenty of jobs, because we're not always paid the best in education. So they'll always communicate, well, I don't get off work until such and such, because they might be a waiter or a waitress or what have you. I said, let me tell you, you can call me at 11 p.m. and we can start the conversation at 11 p.m. Most of the time the conversation won't end until 1 or 2. But the point, what I'm trying to do is establish that rapport right then and there on the phone. It won't last, of course, long if I already feel that you're not going to be a fit. But if it lasts, it's most likely I'm going to recruit you to come on board to Smith Elementary School. But then I have students on the interview panel. That's another one. The students should be able to select you, because they also have a sense of discernment, if you will, for a lack of better words. My teachers are part of the recruitment team. So the secretaries, everybody, because to be at Smith Elementary School, you first of all have to want to, because it's going to be a lot of work. It's not easy work turning a school around and trying to win. And so back to also, I think it was Carlanda. Carlanda hits it on the head. Girl, I need you at my school. She hits it on the head with the growth mindsets. You may not even be exactly what we need that very moment, but if you love kids and you're willing to grow and be open to the constructive feedback, we can grow each other, because I'll still learn from you as well as an administrator. And so I just want to just commend you. And if you ever move to Atlanta, I'm gonna get it before you get it, Erica, because me and Erica are always in competition.
Yes, we have had
we're always in competition.
Before.
So I'm already recruiting you from afar. But she hit it on the head, and I would love for my teachers to even have a video conversation with her, because they continue to try sometimes to be something you're not. You're not going to be Dr. Lockhart. See, I'm a Carlanda when it comes to bubbly. I'm always energetic and all of that, but you will not be able to be me. But when you find your niche, you will be successful and you will grow.
True.
Anybody want to answer that?
I think she pretty much summed it all up.
I got excited about that, because it is my thing, because you have to get the right person or people in your building to fit your culture as well, and your high expectations.
So let me ask you, principals, Dr. Porter as well at home, what happens in your role when you kind of see a teacher who maybe functioned at that high level at one point and they start to slip a little bit? How do you address that?
Well, I think one of the first things to do is to talk to them and see if they're okay. Lots of times people have issues outside of school, and they don't necessarily talk about that with us as administrators initially. But I think if you know your staff, you can tell when someone has been different for an extended period of time, and that's when I just go to them, is everything okay? Sometimes they'll share with you right away, or sometimes they're a little more reluctant depending on what it is, but just letting them know that you're there for them, that you care, and that whatever it is, you can work through it together with their support.
So you mean you build the same type of relationships with your teachers that you want the teachers to build with the students?
We try.
Listen to that. Listen to that. And that's exactly what I was looking for, because I think a lot of times that part is overlooked. And we expect the teachers to give a certain thing to the students, but they may not feel that they are receiving that. But see, these people on my panel.
And she spoke to that, the magical teacher,
Yes.
about taking care of yourself.
Yes.
And so that's key, because you take care of other people's children, you got to take care of yourself as well. And I think maybe offering them opportunities, leadership opportunities, something that's different, to just kind of get that spark back. And so tap into their strengths and find opportunities outside of that classroom role that may get them back interested.
Absolutely.
And I would add just building that family environment in the school itself. Our school is a Smith family, plain and simple. So that being the case, even sometimes with family, it's hard to communicate about the hard things outside of the school. But as Erica stated and Jamil stated, if you can build those types of relationships again, that you got to come on in, because this is also the other side. We still need the work done. So we've got to go ahead and find out what's going on so that we can get back to it. But I want to support you along the way also.
And I would also add, Dr. Blades, that, you know, as I work with new principals that are having some concerns with teachers as well, just to understand, just like we want to work with the whole child, we have to work with the whole teacher, because we know there are some external things that may be going on that's affecting that professionalism. So, and it goes back to relationships. So you have to bridge that so that you're able to freely speak with that teacher and find out what's really going on, because a lot of times it's something not necessarily to do with the profession.
Oftentimes, I would say more often than not, Dr. Porter. So let me ask you this, because you are also an entrepreneur. In addition to being an educator, you're an author, a publisher, you have a couple of talk shows. How do you balance your busy career as an educator with your entrepreneurial work?
So one of the things that I found for me, and I've said this quite often, you know, when I started my entrepreneur journey, I talked with my legal office for my school district, because, you know, that whole conflict of interest thing is real.
Yes.
And so I talked with them, and one of the things that she said that I knew, but something about when she said it, is that she said, well, you know, that's wonderful, but don't use any school district time or school district resources for your business, which I understood. But what that told me, I needed to do the same thing, because as a teacher, as a principal, you know, we would go half the night if we needed to. And that's what you need to do. But boundaries. And I'm saying that to say is that when it's time for me to do my entrepreneurial work, I'm doing my entrepreneurial work. When it's time to do my profession, my 9 to 5, that's what I'm doing. I've established boundaries, and I've been able to have a time block that I am effectively using so that I can complete everything that I need to do. So it's really about just making sure that you prioritize.
Thank you for sharing that, because I know we have a lot of educators who are grappling with wanting to remain in the field, but they also want to pursue other interests and really don't know how to find that balance.
And sometimes, Dr. Blades, if I can say that just about the 3 ladies that are here, as educators, they could probably train principals to be great principals, but they're sometimes so focused on making sure that their schools are running right, and sometimes we lose that talent. So the process that we like to walk them through, when they get a chance to share with their peers around what are their strengths and weaknesses, I think it helps build their peers up just as well, because when you have great administrators, they're the administrator of that building, and there may be somebody 6 miles away that could be doing some of the same things they're doing, but they don't have that connect with that principal. So we got to figure out how to capitalize on them while they're there, not just as entrepreneurs. I understand Dr. Porter's doing her own thing, but we got to get to them while they're still doing it inside the school system, because that's one of the things that me and Ms. Johnson talked about when I was at her school for a visit. I said, I want to be able to spread some of the stuff that you're doing. And she said, let's stay in contact. And this is part of that process, unbeknownst to us. We didn't know that we'd be sitting here talking about it today, but this is part of the process that we talked about. How do we share what you're doing at Lake City with the other principals in your school district?
And that's important as well. When we talk about moving districts from good to great, you have to know what those best practices are. And if you're running your building, you don't have time to have those types of conversations. So, as I mentioned earlier, later on in the broadcast, you will be hearing from our next governor, Stacey Abrams, and her plans for education in Georgia. But before we get to that, I'm going to broach one of the subjects that she brought up, which is culturally relevant instruction. And I know that's something that parents don't necessarily think about, because they may not even be aware that it exists or what it is or that it's necessary, but how can we make sure that teachers are entering this year with a more culturally aware mindset? And that question is for anyone on the panel who wants to take it. I know. Yeah. I know.
Well, I didn't want to be the first one to bite this off.
That's all right.
One of the things when Reggie and I like to talk about is a quote that says, first you got to get kids turned on to living before you get them turned on to learning.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
So if you get them turned on to living and try to figure out what life is all about and connect this thing called education, because I think most of the time if you take a young man, he connects sports to success. If I become a professional athlete, but they don't take that same focus when they're looking at education. How do I take education and connect education to a field where I'm making a lot of money? It may not be a 4-year college either. It could be an 18-year certificate program. It could be a 2-year college or whatever it is. You got to connect that kid to what we call living, and then you can get them to the learning. Because if you put the cart before the horse, as we like to say, if you put the learning first, you're forcing it on them. But if you put the living first, they'll get to the learning part.
And really, and to continue on with that, because that's exactly right. The saying that we hear, you have to Maslow before we can bloom, is so true. You have to get them to that level to meet those basic needs before we can do anything. And so I definitely co-sign what he just said.
I want to give a quick shout out to Dr. Melissa Chester, who is the CEO and co-founder of Black Educators Rock. Thank you, Dr. Chester. She is involved online with a lot of engagement and comments, and I really appreciate your input, Dr. Chester. Thank you for watching. Anybody who is not currently a member of Black Educators Rock, yeah, I've been talking about this for the last 3 shows. I don't know how many more times I have to bring it up. What are you waiting for? Carlanda, you were at the conference.
Life-changing. I came back so empowered seeing doctors and authors that look like me. I came back fired up, ready to pour all that was poured into me into the students and into adults that I work with. Life-changing. If you are not a member, you need to get it together.
And listen, y'all, she didn't need any more firing up, so can you imagine?
Right.
So Ashley, I want to turn the conversation to you for a moment because you don't work in a K-12 setting, but the work that you do is so important to what we do in K-12. How can we better build relationships between people in positions like yours and people in the school buildings so that we can help more students go from secondary to post-secondary?
Basically, it starts off with building the relationships here too. Doing partnerships and being able to collaborate and do college fairs or breakfasts where we can come in and speak to the principals and the teachers and build those relationships and invite you all out to different open houses that we may have to prepare the kids to do that transition. Because working in for-profit education, we deal with students that are right out of high school, and then we have students that have been out for a while, but, they necessarily can't get into a 4-year school, or they're just coming back at a very, mature age. So we're dealing with many different students and backgrounds, and a lot of it is just building those relationships. And with us going into the high schools, we really try to get into the high schools to expose the students to what we do as far as the different programs that we may have by coming in, doing presentations and doing lunch and learns. But the key thing there is just building those relationships to be able to collaborate to get the exposure that we both need.
Thank you. And Reggie and Tony, being that you all don't work for anyone, you work for yourself. Okay? A lot of times, coming into a new school year, teachers dread, okay, who is my district going to bring in this year? Who's my principal going to bring in this year? How do you all break down those walls so that you can help the teachers prepare to have a good school year?
Well, I think first of all, you have to have the right environment. I mentioned culture and climate because that's our business, and obviously I'm a little biased when it comes to culture and climate. But I think initially, it starts at the top. It starts from obviously the superintendent and the board for creating an environment that the work that we're talking about, because so many times I just believe teachers get blamed for everything, principals get blamed for everything, regardless of us realizing. That doesn't mean we lower the standards or the expectations, But people are bringing things, a rucksack, a bag full of stuff from the community in the school, but yet we're asking this superwoman, superman called teacher, or superwoman, superman called principal to create an environment that they didn't create. In other words, let me change this child, because as Tony mentioned earlier, kids are coming to school not all ready to learn. But yet we presuppose kids are coming in ready to learn, and everything you've heard on this panel, there's been very little discussion around pedagogy, instruction, because we realize in order to have a high-performing culture and climate, but more importantly, a high-performing school, you must create a high-performing culture and climate. And the only way to do that is be deliberate and intentional. So when we think of teachers, I still go back to all these things that everyone is saying on this panel. We have to be intentional, we have to be deliberate. We heard relationships, but ultimately, show me a school that has a low-performing classroom, culture and climate, or a low-performing building culture and climate, I would show you a low-performing school. And I think that's intentional, and if you don't put the horse before the cart, then ultimately, you'll be able to do these things that we're talking about, and that is all the things that the panelists are saying, teachers as well. Support them, create an environment where culture and climate is important, so critical thinking and all these other things that we're talking about, kids are bringing PTSD to the school. How do we change those dynamics to create an environment so teaching and learning will occur? And that takes a community approach and not just the teacher and not just the principal. That takes all district all the way to the community and all the stakeholders to create that environment. And so when we present it that way, then people are able to understand it's measurable. Every day you should be able to measure your culture and climate. You should be able to assess it every day, every week. You shouldn't wait till the end of the semester or the end of the year to know how well. Businesses doesn't do it, so why should educators? If it's running smooth in a school, running smooth in a building, running smooth in a classroom, then ultimately teaching and learning will occur because you created the right environment, the right culture, the right climate. And that's top down initially, and then ultimately we can piggyback on that and take that to another level.
And Dr. Blades, one other thing, and Reggie might have hit on it, but educators respond to data and research. We let them know that our process is research-based, and we provide the data to support the research, the work that we're doing. So in a lot of ways, we have to work around how do we get buy-in. When we go into a school system or we go into a school and tell somebody, well, hey, your culture and climate is toxic. So after telling somebody that, then you have to go back in and tell them how to fix it. Yes. It's kind of tough sometimes. So when you show them the research around what happens if you fix this, or you show them the data around how it's impacting your numbers, the ultimate numbers you're looking for, because I think one of the things that me and Reggie have been fortunate enough to do is to be able to measure culture and climate and to put a number on it and show people this is what you have by way of culture and climate. And most of the time, your culture and climate profile number will correlate with your test scores, your graduation rates, and all that other data that you're looking at. So research and data is all buy-in for the educators, because if you don't have that, you can't get them.
Oh, I love it. And so we know that culture and climate needs to come before content. However, teachers feel that their evaluation is totally hinged on the content part and not the culture and climate part. So with that being said, last month our Democratic candidate for state school superintendent, Autor Thornton, was on the show, and earlier today I spoke with Stacey Abrams. Now I want to hear from you all. From a legislative perspective, what types of changes need to be made so that teachers can really focus on the culture and climate and not feel like they only have to focus on the content? Anybody?
Yes, that is.
What is it that we need to see? Well, y'all will hear from Stacey Abrams later what her thoughts were, and so I'll just share mine. Less testing, perhaps.
Yes, most definitely.
Less testing. Carlanda?
Oh, you can see me?
I can see you.
I agree. My thing is, students aren't going to, if you have a relationship with your students, your evaluation will be fabulous because your kids are going to want to work hard for you. And so that right there is the key. So whenever you think about evaluations and things like that, that should be out the door because you should be thinking about the kids. Once again, if you have that relationship, my students know that, for one, I told them, this is your education. And if someone wants to walk into my classroom and ask you what we're doing, it's your that's all I would say about that. Yeah.
I would like to add
Yeah.
as
Go ahead.
Carlanda. Okay. One thing I would like to add, and it's not necessarily the teacher itself, it's the school. The rating on the CCRPI also is something I'd like to have looked at again if possible, because there are factors that we as a school are held accountable for that are beyond our control, such as student attendance, such as also with the behavior, if you will. You have to run your school. You have to ensure that consequences are administered. And that being the case, the particular way it is, I guess the components and how it works now, you could easily be judged as having a school of concern, for lack of better words, when in fact you're trying to make a culture that is more positive, if you will. But if you address those issues, you're looked as having, and I don't know, I'm just calling it a school of concern, but we know what the words are, but, or a dangerous school.
Yeah.
And that is it's concerning to us as educators, and I'll bring back up to teachers, because we're saying, hey, you got to make sure your children come to school. They can call and they can continue to call, but until we make sure that the value of education is also instilled at home, it is a challenge for us as educators. So I would like if we were to say something that the candidates can look at, that will be one, just how that component is, I guess, some type of algorithm or whatever they say.
And it's ever changing. Can
Yeah.
I jump in like that? It's not just this. Speaking for Georgia alone, it's ever changing. So when you think you've mastered it and you get to a certain point, then the next year is completely different. So it's a moving target. So how can you expect to get better if it's not stable? Because what is it? You're expected to see change within 3 to 5 years. So I know just with the CCRPI, it's changed every year for the last 5 years. So just something more stable and consistent.
It's interesting that we would be discussing things like Start Climate, and as we travel around the country, I will say Georgia is one of the states that's further ahead than a lot of states that we work with in terms of measuring and assessing culture and climate. But at the same time, the Start Climate rating alone is not indicative of how successful a school may be, because it's taken from a historical perspective of last year, but yet it gives the brand or marketing. When people think about a school, they think of that school as being toxic because of something that may have happened that previous year. But yet when you go into school, and I've been in several schools, and I would tell you again, if it wasn't true, I wouldn't say it. Some of the schools, we have some real jewels in some places, but unless you get an opportunity to go into those schools and see, and if you read just Start Climate, which isn't an indicator, but it's only one. Now let's look at something more relevant, more today, more up to date, and then by doing that, you'll have a better perspective of those schools. Because I always say, any principal teacher should ask themselves this question: would I want my child to attend this school? And if the answer to that is no, then I think we have a lot of work to do. But if we're striving and we're making that school better, testing, critical thinking, all these things are extremely important. But again, one indicator alone is not indicative. Even though it's one of the indicators, there are so many other things to be able to measure. And I think that's why we're so proud of our work. And that is, we measure culture and climate. One component is Start Climate. There are so many other things you can look at in the building, in the classroom, to be able to get a real perspective of what's going on in a school. And ultimately, principals will be able to do the things that they do for CCRPI, attendance and graduation rates and et cetera. If you're able to measure culture and climate and to be able to be data driven, you can do something about that culture and climate.
Yeah, we have a request from a viewer, Derek Johnson. Thank you for tuning in, Derek. And he's asking if we can talk about the support for new teachers, especially in low performing schools. I guess really if we could just give some advice. What would be the advice to new teachers in low performing schools?
What I would advise is the principal be sure to support the teachers. I have not many new teachers, but I have about 3 this year. And I've had a challenge trying to get the LeBrons, as I've communicated already, but I now have them. And so some of the things that we did last week in particular, again, kind of back to our magic teacher, everybody's personality is not that bubbly. And so, and I think the particular teacher, she would not mind me communicating this. We practiced all week long trying to give her a stance, because tomorrow she's going to need it.
Yes.
And we want her to be successful.
Yes.
So pretty much all week long, I mean, the academic coach, the assistant principals, other teachers, we've been rallying around her, because we know that if she is not able to establish that that stance on classroom management, if you will, we're going to have a challenge, and that's going to then make her discouraged, etc. So that being the case, that's one thing that we're doing, practicing as though it's a real classroom, giving her the challenges of what some children might do, not just being orderly sitting there. We're trying to be distractive, if you will. We're trying to give her scenarios that she can practice how she can help. And so my point is, I think that a lot of times content may not, and matter of fact, content I know is not going to be any concern of hers. Oh man, she's awesome. But because she is a quiet spirit, we had to practice with her, because we wanted to give her one up, if you will, for a lack of better words. So that's just something we did.
Okay, thank you.
And Dr. Blades, I would definitely say in my office, we have the school leadership side and then we have the teacher side. And one of the good things about, I feel in my district, is the teacher mentors that that most of the new teachers get, not all of them. But I really believe that really garnering a mentor, whether it's in the building or not in the building, just someone who can help guide that new teacher. We all know that we don't get it doing student teaching. We know this. It doesn't hit us till we step in that classroom. It's real then. And so having someone there to help guide them is beneficial. And if your district does not offer that, you have to be proactive and find your own mentor. I believe that's just essential.
Dr. Blades, one other thing I'd like to add, when you take all these great educators that we're on the panel with, if they have the time to go into classrooms and be those mentors, as opposed to running a building or looking out for this and that and not having the time to go in and be the educators they were trained to be. Once you take these people and they can go inside the classroom and they can work with those new teachers and they can show them strategies and they can spend time with them, quality time, not just popping in to do an evaluation, but time you can sit with them and see some of the things they're doing wrong and some of the things they're doing right.
Yes.
We say if that coaching climate is right, that frees up the principal, the assistant principal, and all those other administrators that went into education to teach educators how to be great educators, as opposed to just running a school building. And we say when you lose that time, you lose a great educator.
One of the things I'd like to add is for a beginning teacher to not be afraid to ask for help. No one expects you to know everything. My first year of teaching, I thought I was supposed to know everything. So it was extremely stressful, added stress. I added stress to myself that I didn't need to. So I would definitely say to reach out and ask for help, ask your grade level or department chairs. And again, as one of the other members of the panel mentioned, if your district does not already set you up with a mentor, be proactive and make sure that you have one so that you can be successful.
Okay, I want to thank you all for sharing as much as you have today. And now we are going to take a moment to look at the special segment with our gubernatorial candidate for the state of Georgia, Ms. Stacey Abrams. So that will roll in just a moment. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special segment of the Dr. Marquita Blades Show, Candid Conversations that Create Change. I am Dr. Blades, and this segment will feature a very special guest, Georgia's Democratic candidate for governor, Ms. Stacey Abrams. Ms. Abrams, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I know that you're busy on the campaign trail, so I'm going to just head right into these questions. Starting with, right now, people consider these to be some of the most tumultuous times in our country in terms of politics. So how did you know that this was the right time for you to run for governor of Georgia?
First of all, I want to say thank you for the work that you do to such a broad swath of Georgia, especially our educators. I think that while we've seen the tumult become more aggressive in the last couple of years, we've been facing challenges in the state for, and while I've been privileged to serve as Democratic leader in the House, I've been a Georgia long time. I wanted to speak up to share what I've learned, but also share my values and my vision for Georgia as the next governor. So this was in response to any one particular moment. It's mission that we have to have leaders who look like Georgia, who stand up and say that we're going to speak for all of Georgia, not just the communities that we represent.
Thank you. We know that most teachers would like pay raises and smaller classes and less testing and all of those things that we kind of talk and maybe complain about all the time. But what other plans, aside from those issues, do you have for Georgia educators?
I would say this. I would acknowledge that those are core issues for every educator, because that cuts across the region that you teach in, it cuts across the subject that you teach, and it's the cornerstone of how much it costs to fund education in Georgia. When we are raising teacher salaries, we're encouraging more folks to come into the classroom. That allows us to reduce class sizes because you have more teachers, opportunities. If you have smaller class sizes and more ability to pay attention to students, you can reduce the high stakes testing because you're actually able to engage those young minds one-to-one and really understand what they need. But I think the broader set of supports that I'm advocating for, in addition to increased salaries, decreased class sizes, and absolutely decreasing high stakes testing, is wraparound services. Educators are expected to take care of the whole child, but that's not possible when one of the challenges is the mental health of a young person, because they know when they go home, that means going home to a car and not to an apartment. It means making sure that they all have access to physical health and nutrition, making sure that they've got the glasses they need to see the chalkboard. They've had a hearing test after 4th grade to make sure they can actually hear what's going on in the classroom. So it's thinking about those wraparound services that make it possible for children to learn, and it makes it possible for teachers and education professionals to focus on their jobs, not trying to do the entire job of the social service system.
In preparation for this interview, I consulted my mentor, Dr. Chika Akua, who is an outstanding educator and scholar, and he raised the point from a recent article that he read where you stated that you would like to be known as the public education governor. So, of course, that made us smile as educators. And along those lines, we started to discuss the fact that there seems to be a budget issue in education in terms of how funds are allocated. So how will your administration address the issue of equitable allocation of funding within the education system, particularly to those districts where we see there being a high number of minorities and receiving the least amount of funds currently?
Fundamentally, we have to reevaluate the funding formula for students. The quality basic education formula made sense 40 years ago. It does not make sense today. And we know it doesn't make sense because we've seen successive governors evaluate the formula, but then shy away from the answer, because the answer has traditionally meant that we were going to have to shift how we fund, and we were going to have to put more money into certain communities. It is more expensive to educate a child that comes from a low-income community. It is more expensive to educate a child in a rural community. It is more expensive to educate a child who speaks English as a second language. And it's more expensive to educate a child who has special needs. That means any formula has to reflect that we have to make higher investments in those communities. But the benefit is that we get a higher return, because these are communities that, if they are properly educated, there's less cost on the other side. They are more likely to get a job. They are less likely to face incarceration. They're less likely to rely on public services. And so we have to fix the education formula in Georgia, despite how difficult it's going to be. And that's one of the reasons I talk about being the public education governor. I don't intend to distract from the core issue of funding public education with the pretense that we've seen through the private school vouchers and through the conversations about opportunity school districts. Those have all been ways to distract from the core responsibility of the state, which is fully funding a good education for our students.
And along those lines, similarly, the Democratic candidate for state school superintendent, Mr. Otha Thornton, was on my show last month, and he talked about his desire to increase the number of strategic partnerships between businesses in Georgia and our schools so that we can focus on making our students career ready when they leave high school. And I know that you have recently taken a Georgia Jobs for Georgia tour. And so I wanted to know if there were any conversations that you had as you were meeting with business leaders that would encourage the development of these types of strategic partnerships.
Absolutely. One of the cornerstones of our Jobs for Georgia tour is my pledge to create 22,000 apprenticeships. Let me take that back, not a pledge. It is my intention and it is my vow. I get wary when politicians use the term pledge. I think we overuse that, but I want to state my intent. And my intent is to absolutely create 22,000 apprenticeships by 2022. And here's why businesses are excited about this. That means that they get workers on the job immediately, that they are training for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow. And by doing it in partnership with our schools and with the state, what we create is the opportunity to actually help fund these apprenticeships through public-private partnership. Those kids are making money, those young adults are making money, they're starting to take care of themselves, they're learning the hard skills and the soft skills at the same time, and they are business ready by the time businesses need them. We went down to Southeast Georgia and I met with labor unions. They are eager to sign more young people up to take on these skilled trade jobs, electrician, welder, plumber. Those are jobs that we're going to consistently need, but we don't have enough folks going into those areas of business. And if we can do that work now, we not only help create lifetime opportunity for these young people, we actually start to fill the jobs and create a pipeline for more jobs to come to Georgia. And that's really what we want. More jobs that are good paying jobs where more of our folks can take those jobs and take care of themselves and their families.
Thank you. With increasing diversity in states such as New York, New Jersey, Illinois, Florida, and California, they have all passed laws requiring culturally relevant and responsive teaching. And to my knowledge, there is no such law like that in Georgia. Is this something that your administration intends to address?
I would absolutely work in cooperation with the state legislature and the school superintendent to make certain that every child is learning about the whole of our nation and the whole of our state. Diversity is an incredibly important part of that. You know, both of my parents have, as they both got joint degrees when they were in college, and both of them studied African American history. That meant that as they were raising us, they were able to augment our understanding of the community we were a part of by providing us with information we weren't necessarily getting in school. And I think that kind of cultural relevance only adds to the capacity of our young people to live in an increasingly diverse society. You can do it, but it's easier to work with folks when you truly understand the challenges faced, the opportunities achieved, and the history. It's why we teach history in schools, because we want folks to be able to engage fully and completely. And I would certainly make that a part of what I push for as the next governor of Georgia.
Thank you, Ms. Abrams. Now, you recently received a very public and highly celebrated endorsement from President Barack Obama. So I have to know, how does it feel to not only be endorsed by him, but to know that you are on the verge of making a similar place in history for yourself?
I am proud to have earned President Obama's endorsement. It means the world. I had the opportunity to work with him during my tenure as Democratic leader in the House. I worked with President Obama and his administration on the Affordable Care Act, on Medicaid expansion, on criminal justice reform, on a number of key issues. And it is very heartening to have his support as we head into this last 93 days of this election. But it's also incredibly important to me that my election be seen as a beginning of something, not just a moment of achievement, but that I'm opening the door for others. I recently wrote a book called Minority Leader. And the premise of the book is really not just to tell my story, but to talk about how my story was made possible, and then to give folks ideas about how to make their own stories come true. My candidacy is about seeing those who go unseen, lifting up voices that go unheard, and using policy to create opportunity for families so that everyone has the freedom and the opportunity to thrive. And so I see this campaign as a matter of great fortune. I am incredibly privileged to have this opportunity, but I'm even more excited about my ability to expand this opportunity to so many others who didn't see themselves in this space.
Well, I thank you so much again, Ms. Abrams, for sharing with me today. I know that my audience will appreciate you taking the time out to speak to them and answer these very vital questions that we have about education. So I will allow you to get back to your hectic campaign schedule, but I want you to know that here at the Dr. Marquita Blades Show, you have our full support, and we're very excited about having you as Georgia's next governor.
Well, Dr. Blake, let me say thank you for the opportunity to share with your audience. I want to remind them that, again, we've got 93 days to go until the election. Please make sure you check your voter registration. Make sure that you're on the rolls. Please make sure you vote early. Early voting starts absentee balloting. You can start getting those on September 18th. And then we've got 3 weeks of early voting, and election day is November 6th. And if they want more information about my campaign, including my very comprehensive early childhood learning and our K through 12 education platform, please check out my website at stacyabrams.com.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Abrams.
Thank you so much, Dr. Blake.
Take care. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that segment with our gubernatorial candidate, Ms. Stacey Abrams. Before we sign off today, I'm going to ask that each of my panelists and also our guests, our panelists who are not in the studio, just share one tip for educators, parents, students, whomever your target audience may be. One tip for getting their school year off to the right start. And then also let everyone know how they can connect with you. And we'll start with in studio this time.
I say keep students first and foremost. Don't allow the distractions and noise to get in the way. So stay focused on your vision and our purpose for work. You can reach me, Jamil Miller Brown, at Riverdale High School in Clayton County. Jamil.Miller-Brown at Clayton.K12.ga.us. And thank you so much, Dr. Blades, for this opportunity. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I think one of the first things that I would say, and this is for the adults especially, but self-care is extremely important. So take care of yourself, because I know as women, not to exclude the men here, but I know as women, a lot of times we really don't do that. But you cannot pour from an empty cup. So self-care, I think, is one of the most important things. I'm Erica Johnson at Lake City Elementary, and you can reach me at erica.john. That's Erica with a C. And there are two Ericas Johnsons in Lake City. Two Erica Johnsons in Clayton County. But I am erica.johnson at clayton.k12.ga.us.
All righty. For teachers, I would say love your students into submission and then teach them. The love quotient for me is very, very, very big with children. It just really is. So love your students into submission and teach them. For our parents, continue to support us. We need you. We cannot do the work without you. And then I'd like to say something even for our support team members. We appreciate all that you're doing at our schools, because we could not do the work without you. As far as my name and all of that is quite long, so my school is Roberta T. Smith Elementary School. My name is Shabrinia Lockhart. The email is extremely long, so just look me up on our school website and you'll be able to click right on that email. And thank you for having me.
I'll let Reggie give the information on us, but once again, I'd just like to say two things. If we keep doing what we've always done, we'll keep getting what we always got. Let's change. If you're not doing something, you're not getting the results that you want to get. And then the second thing, a prominent leader once said that if I can look at your zip code and determine the quality of education that you're going to receive, we got a problem. So I think that based on that, don't let your school be the problem based on the zip code where it's located. You're, as an educator, you're responsible for educating that kid regardless of where they come from. Don't let parental involvement be an option. Make sure that those parents are involved in the kids' lives just like they would be in any other part of the town. I'm going to turn it over to Reggie. He'll tell you how to get in touch with both of us.
The only other thing I would add is it's amazing when over the last few years, whether we've gone in Missouri or Kansas or D.C. or wherever we worked at, when we look at a national level and I see things like 1.2 million kids still dropping out every year, and that's gone on for 9-10 years, when we see 3-point-something million kids in ISS and OSS, and we see the number of 250,000 young ladies that are teen mothers and all those other kinds of things on a yearly basis, I like to say we don't have a youth problem. in many cases, we have an adult problem. But what we tend to do is point the finger. And I always say, look at the finger pointing back at you, because we all have a role, and there's enough blame going around. And so our business is culture and climate. We just believe solely that the foundation for educational success is a high-performing culture and climate that's in the building and the classroom. And so with that, we can be reached at www.theffes.com or info@theffes.com. Thank you.
Okay, Ashley.
All right. Well, for the teachers, I would say build relationships and stay focused. And for our parents, stay involved and hold your kids accountable. My name is Ashley Little, and my email address is aalittle08@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Carlanda.
The last thing I would add for parents, students, and teachers is to speak life into yourself and into others, into practice positive self-talk. It'll change the atmosphere, it'll change your life, and just stay positive and speak the goals that you want and then work for it. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Magical Teacher, and my email is themagicalteachercw@gmail.com.
Thank you. Dr. Sharon.
Yes, absolutely. And my final message is for new principals. I would say listen and learn, be fair and consistent. Definitely. And I can be reached across all social media platforms at I am Dr. Sharon, and that's I am Dr. Sharon. That's on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Once again, I just want to thank all of my panelists for all of the insight that you shared. To the viewers, I told y'all that this show was going to be jam-packed, and I know they delivered. So thank y'all for making me look so good. Before we sign off, I want to make everyone aware that next Sunday, August 12th, is the online book launch for my book, Chronicles of the Chronically Ill. It is an anthology including my story as well as 6 other ladies who decided to just talk about how our chronic illnesses impacted our daily lives, but how we are living beyond the diagnosis. I also want to say that I think 4 of us are educators. So there are a lot of teachers out there who are going to work every day and who are going through an internal struggle that no one knows about. And so this book is critical. If you don't even have a chronic illness, maybe you're a caregiver, or maybe you've just seen you've heard about somebody that has this illness, or you've heard about the illness itself. Anybody can benefit from reading this book, I promise you. So next Sunday, August 12th, there will be an online book launch. Just watch my Facebook so that you can get all the information and you can order the book for yourself or for someone else. Also, to reiterate the point made by Stacey Abrams, we need to make sure that we are registered to vote. So go ahead and check your status now. I forget what the time frame is, but if you don't vote within so many elections, you're dropped off of the roster. So make sure that you are still on the roster, and if you're not, go ahead and get registered, because we have work to do. And for everything that we've talked about on the panel today, we can't affect any legislative change if we're not in the voting booth. So we need to make that a priority this year as well. So thank you all for joining me for this show. We've had an amazing time. Thank you again to my guests. This has been this Sunday's episode of the Dr. Marquita Blades Show on Lyve TV here at Status Network, the future of broadcasting. I'll see you next time.
Later.
Bye.